everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Kobie-Marie Kritzinger, and I'm a wealth advisor at PSG Wealth Menlyn. We've compiled the Wealth Wisdom series to empower you to manage your wealth better and to plan better for your financial future. In today's video, we are honoring and celebrating inspirational women on Women's Day. We all have role models in our lives. Role models are the people who bring out the best in us, who inspire us to push our boundaries and to be the best that we can be. It is a great pleasure and privilege for me to share Women's Day with a very special friend of mine and also my role model. Ann Mackeurtan was the first female stockbroker admitted to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. What makes this achievement even more remarkable was that Wall Street admitted their first female stockbroker only 1 month prior to Ann being admitted. I'm proud to call Ann my friend, fellow investment colleague, as well as a role model. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Kobie, for inviting me. It's a great privilege to be with you.
So Ann, where did it all start? Did you have the dream as a young girl to become the world's best stockbroker?
Not really. My grandfather started the business in 1936 and my father came to the business in 1950. I had no intention of being in stockbroking. However, life changes with circumstances. I matriculated in 67 at Rodin and I was going to have a year's worth of golf. But in the middle of that year, my father was absolutely inundated with work and it was the 1968 boom. So he said, forget the golf, you're coming in to help me. So I started in his office in 1968. Never wanting to be in stockbroking. He worked me hard because in those days, we typed our broker's notes, we literally received payments, had to physically pay them out. We had scrip and envelopes we delivered. Everything was done by hand and it was meeting certain deadlines. And so he was a hard taskmaster, but he was an unbelievable role model. He taught me everything I needed to know about life. And if we had to work until 10 o'clock at night on trial balances or anything to do with the business, bearing in mind there was 3 people in it at that time, that's what I had to do. So I learned probably the most important thing in life, which was to really work very hard. Anyway, sadly, in 1974, I was pregnant with my son, Justin, and in the middle of that pregnancy, my father had an accident. He fell downstairs and 4 days later died. He left me a business. At that point in time, no woman had ever been allowed into the stock exchange. So at the end of the year, having had my son, I went to the JSE committee, and I suppose I was a bit cheeky. I said to them, I'm 24 years old, I have a business, I've learned to run it, and I want to write the JSE exams. And Richard Lurie, who was the president of the JSE at the time, and a lot of very esteemed other men who all knew me and my father, said, well, he said, if you pass, and that means passing the exams, and that means passing the oral exam as such, well, we'll think about admitting you. And I said, okay, fine. Thank you very much. I'm going to go and write the exams as soon as I've studied. But in saying that, it was a little bit difficult because there were no set lessons. I then had to get past papers. And I've got 3 men that I'd like to thank enormously for helping me. One was Warren Myers, who worked for the JSE. He did all the rules and regulation papers with me. The next was a guy from Davis Borkham, George Joubert. He wrote all the investment papers with me, taught me what I needed to know. And of course, in those days, you had 10-year plans. You didn't have 5-year plans or 1-year plans. You put the money in for 10 years, so you had to make sure you knew exactly what you were doing. And then I had an auditor friend, and he wrote all the, well, not wrote, but he helped me through all the accounts and taxation papers. Quite daunting. And I went into that exam thinking, I don't know if I've learnt enough or there were papers I missed. And well, I had to pat myself on the back. I passed very nicely. Then went into an oral exam. Went into an oral exam, and I was so nervous I could hardly speak. So eventually we got through the oral questions, and I then went again to the committee and said, right, what are we going to do now? And all of them said, wonderful, we're going to admit you.
Fantastic.
Which was phenomenal. And then came my day of walking onto the floor, and it was a sad day for me because my father's best friend, John Bishop, who was with Davis Borkham, he insisted on walking me onto the floor with literally 90 men all cheering me on. So that was
Wolves' whistles.
the wolf whistles, etc. Sadly, my mother was too busy gardening. She couldn't come in from Sandown to in fact, Hollard Street. It was too much for her, so she couldn't be there. She was pruning the roses, and hope you don't mind, but I won't be there. But she cut out every newspaper article. So that was my start in the JSE.
And from a very young age, you had enormous responsibility. And in life, nothing of value comes easily. But surely there must have been moments of self-doubt where you doubted yourself and your own abilities. How did you manage that these moments of self-doubt didn't derail you?
Well, in those days, remember, I was much younger and I played a lot of golf. So I tried to get out onto the course, I tried to walk, I tried to get my mind off situations that were sometimes quite difficult. When a company share price drops 25% and you've got them on all your portfolios, you've got this terrible feeling, well, why did I choose that particular stock? Why didn't I see this coming? And of course, life is such that you can't see it coming. So it was a lot of evaluating, is this the right decision? Should I change it? And maybe I shouldn't be here. I should be doing something else. But common sense comes to the fore and you make a decision either to keep that stock or to change it. And so self-doubt is part of all of our lives. Are we right? Are we wrong?
But it's all about the bounce back.
It's the bounce back. And that's one thing that my father taught me. His expression was, when you cry alone. And when you laugh, the whole world laughs with you. And that is something that I have kept in mind, because it is life, and we do make mistakes. We are human. Tell me where there's a person who hasn't made a mistake. There isn't one, but we just got to bounce back.
So make the mistake, but keep the lesson?
Yes. Never buy that share again. Oh, yeah.
And you must be quite proud to see how women are fulfilling leadership roles more and more in the world, not just in the corporates, but also in political roles. A lot has changed over the years since you stepped onto the JSE floor and you were the only female.
Absolutely, and it couldn't be better for women. I think that women are, in all sorts of fields, seem to adapt very quickly, and I think that their qualifications are such that they're being put into higher positions, and that to me is absolutely vital. Because although I'm not in any way saying that men need to be ousted, please don't get me wrong, they are very important. But I think in order to get a balance going forward, you need to have a mixture of women and men together, whether it's ruling a country or ruling a business, running a business. It is important. And for me, I really am heartened by the dedication of women. I'm watching the elections in the UK at the moment. I'm looking at Liz Truss and how she's putting herself forward in a very difficult situation. And I'm proud. I'm proud that women are achieving as much as they are.
So, Anne, hard work, commitment and sacrifice Are those the ingredients for success and also your success that you had in your life?
Yes, I think it is. Hard work, commitment, and probably a lot of sacrifice. And I think the two people who would probably feel that to a certain degree would be my two children. I had Justin is now 48 and my daughter is 38, and both of them possibly never had as much time with me as they should have. Whereas now with my grandson, and he's 10 months old, I am realizing as I hold him in my arms just how much perhaps I missed my own children, or with my own children.
So, Anne, if you could turn back the clock, what would you change?
Well, I'd say to you I couldn't do anything differently because I feel in all my time, in all the different positions possibly that I've had, that I, with the help of people around me, remember it's not only your success or my success, it is the success of working with a team. So I've had some incredible moments with some incredible people, and the client base that I had. They supported me for 40 years. They've been there, they're still there. And those people are my friends. So what can you do without your friends? What can you do without other people helping you when you need it? So my feeling is don't ever be too proud to ask for help. And you need to communicate. You need to tell people, this is what I feel, this is what you shouldn't have done, and for people to communicate with you when they're in trouble. And that's what I learned when I was at Amara SB Reed, was people needed to talk about their problems. And if you listened and you gave advice, they were loyal to you for the rest of time.
So, Anne, let's discuss the concept of advice. You've been through many negative market cycles and events in the market. Thinking back of Black October in 87, the Asian crisis in 98, the dot-com bubble, and then financial market crisis, and then even COVID. What have you learned over time about these negative market cycles and the advice that you give your clients?
That you stay with your investments, that you, if you're not happy perhaps with one of the choices, you immediately move in with another choice. You don't remain selling out and then waiting for the time to get back in. So what have I learned? I've learned not to panic. It's difficult, and I'll talk to you about my daughter's portfolio because this actually puts it in perspective. When her father died, he left her a sum of money, and we chose August to invest it, and the 500,000 that was left to her 2 weeks later was 125,000 because of what happened in America, 9/11 or whatever. So I sat there and I thought, this has never happened to me. What can I do now? Should I sell out, take the rest of the money? And then a deep breath, a very deep breath. And I thought, no, I've chosen 10 of the best shares. I'm going to literally stay with them. And as the dividends come in, I'm going to reinvest. Within a year's period, that portfolio was worth 1.8 million. So I think one has got to understand that it's tough when things are bad, but you cannot panic. You cannot run away from what you've got to face. As long as you're able to, of course. But,
So, Anne, staying on the course is the best advice, but people tend to want to take action when there's crisis. And then what you're saying is that the best advice is actually to sit on your hands and do nothing, and that's the best action.
Correct, absolutely. Not easy.
Absolutely.
So, Anne, let's come back to today. The war in Ukraine started on the 24th of February, but we already had challenging supply chains and already a challenging, fragile world economy. But we've never had to deal with war and the uncertainty. So it seems as if the only certainty is uncertainty. And a lot of people have become very depressed and they suffer from anxiety. I think specifically with regards to people who are planning retirement shortly or have already retired and they need to receive an income. How do you stay calm during these uncertain periods? And how do you keep your clients calm during this very challenging time?
The clients that I have been with me 45 years, because I've been in the industry 54. So they know how I operate. I don't panic any longer. As I say, I might change an investment from time to time. It has worried me in the sense of Ukraine and Russia, and that I've never been through a war like that. I'm horrified with what I've seen. I'm horrified with the ramifications. But that's what's happening now. So we've got to keep a cool head. Then we've got inflation. Then we've got Brexit. Then we've got all sorts of other issues in America with, with Biden versus Trump and people doing extraordinary things. Look at Sri Lanka. So it seems almost to be like everything is going wrong all at the same time. So the one sentence I keep in my head is, things never stay the same. They will improve. The next problem is there are a lot of people who are very depressed after COVID. They've been isolated. They are running out of money. They can't get jobs. I don't know quite how we handle creating new jobs, but I do know that you've got to keep talking to people and you've got to keep assuring them that things will be all right. And maybe they look to finding another way of making money. But the older people, as long as you've got the portfolios that you put together 30 years ago, are still in line with giving the income that they need, you're okay, you can breathe. But let me say something to you, it's not comfortable. And I worry about people, really worry.
Mm. When managing clients' money, would you make a distinction between the management of a portfolio of a woman versus a man? Or would you be treating them exactly the same?
Firstly, we'd be treating them exactly the same. I've been very lucky in that I would say 80% of my client base is male. I'd love to tell you a wonderful story because it actually says something about me in a way. When my father died and when I was in the business, there were three of us just starting off. A man came in dressed in jeans and he sat in front of me and he said, I've got 500 Rand, how would you invest it? And I got the paper out and I said, these are the shares that I would choose. I spent 3/4 of an hour with him and he then got up and he said, well, thank you very much. And out he walked. And I can remember sitting there being absolutely crestfallen. I spent so much time, I gave him good suggestions, and maybe he just didn't like me as a woman. Next day he came in his suit, and he said, Anne, I'd like to give you this envelope. And I said, well, thank you very much. Opened the envelope, and it was 150,000 Rand check. He said, if you can take as much time as you did over 500 Rand, I'm very happy to invest with you. So I have many of those sort of stories. But men, I must be honest with you, I generally find easier than women investors because they accept situations quicker than women do. Women tend to panic maybe a little more than men, but the same portfolio, the only thing that's important is that I've got to listen to what they really want to achieve at the end. Whether they need income, whether this portfolio is a small amount of their money. So I spent a lot of time initially finding out the entire story.
Mm. But you've touched on a very important concept here, Anne, is what are the requirements for a client? It is so important to do that analysis for a client to actually determine how that specific portfolio would fit into their overall lifestyle and their total financial planning.
Well, I think I've got to say this. When in my previous work life, I used to tell everybody it didn't matter how small the amount of money we would take it on because you never knew whether they had relations who had a lot of money or not. So it's a situation now where you, as you say, you've got to hear the whole story. It is a question of where they want to go with this money. And I would take as much time with a really big portfolio as I will with a smaller portfolio. There's no quantifying the money. It's how I can help them. And someone was quite amazed because at one stage I had a portfolio of 750 million rand, and I never had to phone him. I just had to tell him what I was, send him a little story as to what I was doing. And I did the same little story for someone who had 20,000 rand. It's communication. Make sure they're happy.
Mm. You've touched on an important concept, and that is the distinction between a small portfolio and a large portfolio. And people have different ideas of what is wealth.
Very much so.
How do you understand and define wealth?
That's a very tough question to answer, because my own understanding of wealth may not be their understanding of wealth. I like to spread my assets, so it always was in the past that you would have property, you would have jewelry, you would have furniture, art. Art I love, so it's an easy one. And then you'd have your portfolio, and probably at this stage you would have an offshore portfolio, so that there is a rand hedge element. Again, you've got to look at the person, and you've got to say, well, yeah, you know, what is your idea of wealth? What do you want to achieve? It's a difficult question to answer. What's my idea of wealth? I think at the end of the day, my idea is that we've got to all remain safely looked after, no matter what age you are.
And let's go back to the concept of role models and Women's Day and the role that women play in each other's lives. You mentioned friendship and the importance of friendship. I mean, that's why we're here today. Has that helped you in your career and completed you as a woman and a businesswoman in your journey in business?
Kobie, sadly, I haven't had much time for my friends other than to see them when I see them. Role models, there's only one role model for me, and that was my father. I think everything that I have and have achieved is largely due to how he trained me. Friends are so important. You and I go back a while, and you were the most amazing person who walked into our office and told us how we should be doing things, and I argued with you most of the time. So it's the ability to be with people and to actually bring out the best in them, sometimes the worst. But I wouldn't do without friends. I wouldn't do without my family. Wouldn't be able to do without my daughter, who helps enormously. And of course, so people are important.
Managing clients' money is a very responsible role that you have in your life, but you're not just an investment professional and a portfolio manager. You're also a mother and a grandmother. How do you balance your roles that you have to fulfill every day?
Well, they're easier now. When I was the CEO of Amara SP Reed, I had very long hours. Literally was 7 to 7. Since I've joined PSG, life has become easier because, first of all, there was different scenarios that were easier for me to handle. And now with COVID, in a sense, I've worked at home for almost 2 years. We have a team that comes to the house. We have an office in Hyde Park. But the most important part is that I have been able to spend time with my daughter, with my grandson. And he is the light of my life. He really is. I'm not being rude to my daughter, but this little face comes and he puts his arms out. And that's so special. I've waited a long time to be a grandmother. So Yeah. I like being busy. I'm 71 years old. My grandson is very special.
Special moments. And thank you so much for joining us today. It is a great pleasure and a privilege to have spent time with you, and I wish you many, many years filled with lots of grandchildren going forward.
Thank you, Kobie, very much.
What a glorious way to spend Women's Day. To all the strong, courageous, intelligent and brave women out there, we salute you on Women's Day. Surround yourself with people who can bring out the best in you, the role models who can make your life meaningful. Thank you for joining us today for the special edition of the Wealth Wisdom Series for Women. If you liked our video today and you found it of value, please press the like, subscribe, and notification bell. That will ensure that you will be notified every time that we post a new video. If you have any specific comments on financial advice or financial markets, please feel free to add it in the comment section, or you can email us at the email address on the screen. Until next time, goodbye.